in today's session we thought, of course, the very word value means worth, right? So whatever is worthy, that is what we call value. So in this particular session, we'll sort of decode what can be the components of a value education program. We'll take a yogic and Indian knowledge system perspective on this. So what we've typically seen is that, both of us have been, faculty at Amrita University for about a decade. And in the course of 10 years, we've talked to about 10,000 students through various courses, of course. And then we found that often what happens is we expect certain values to be embodied in the students. And then we expect those values to become attitudes, and then we also expect an immediate behavioral change. For example, we had a first year value education program or a cultural education program. But what happens is at the end of the program, we expect an immediate behavioral change among the students. So in fact, 2 days back when we met a person here at the IIT Delhi guest house, when we told that we are part of this workshop, then he immediately said, in those times we used to remember our teachers, we used to respect our teachers. But now we don't get the same respect from our students. This is something that commonly we hear. Many of the teachers say that, we have so much attachment, love and affection towards our teachers. But somehow our students don't seem to give the same love and affection. Suppose they see us outside the college or the university, they don't even bother to say a hello or a good morning or whatever is it. So what happens is, even in spite of having a value education program or a cultural program or whatever it is, that behavioral change doesn't seem to be happening. That's because fundamentally we understand that change takes a lot of time. It may not manifest immediately, but there are some attitudinal changes that are happening internally. But in this session, what we would like to focus on is that to manifest these values, there are definitely some obstacles. Suppose I say you have to be honest. It's not possible to change my behavior from the next day onwards because there are some obstacles to manifest that particular value. Suppose I say don't throw garbage on the streets. It's very difficult. You'll need a whole movement like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan to bring that delta change in the attitude and behavior of people. So it means that inherently we are willing to change, but it takes a little bit of effort from our side, and there are definitely some obstacles for that change to happen. So in the yogic system, there are something called kleshas. I think some people might be introduced to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So these kleshas prevent us from enshrining or embodying certain values, and the yogic system focuses on cleansing before we embody those values.
Again, we are using these terminologies because it need not be exposed to the students or others, but for ourselves, when we wish to understand it deeper and we wish to take it forward, it's very useful to understand terminologies and frameworks. So just as we do with everything, engineering frameworks, management frameworks, we use frameworks to understand, appreciate what is going on behind the scenes. We are introducing these frameworks. Yesterday we looked at a framework of Purushartha, and hence we looked at how we can design something that is Dharma Pradhana, not just Artha Pradhana or Kama Pradhana. That helps us reason out very clearly, with no confusion at all, with no ambiguity at all. But it helps us navigate complex territory with ease. Otherwise, that navigation becomes very, very difficult because we are lost in operational difficulties and details in our daily working lives. So that's the use of these frameworks. Similarly, here we will introduce some frameworks which most of you would already have heard. It will reinforce, and also we will look at it from different angles, so that becomes easier to appreciate. So as she said, before embodying values, a system of cleansing and harmonizing becomes useful. So it reorganizes us in ways which help us manifest what we desire, what we wish to embody as a value. So towards that, one of the things that we look at is pancha kleshas. Klesha is something like a obstacle that causes error in manifestation. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha and Abnivesha. So these are Sanskrit terms, but we are now comfortable with English terms. These are also very intuitive. It's very easy to grasp, and it's just a question of a reorientation. When we, let me start with a simple anecdote. So once we were, we had South Indians, coming to Himalayas. Many Tamilians were there in the group, and in the Himalayas, access to aloo paratha is very easy. And aloo paratha is very tasty. It's and in South India, in Tamil Nadu, aloo paratha is a delicacy that you don't have every day. You have it once in a while. You eat out, and it's like aloo paratha. People look forward to it. So many of them were looking forward to aloo paratha, aloo paratha, aloo paratha. They were all excited about aloo paratha. Himalayas obviously is the land of aloo paratha, and Maggi, of course. Maggi is everywhere. But aloo paratha they were looking forward to. And first thing in the morning, breakfast, they ordered aloo paratha. It was very tasty, very, very delicious to the South Indian tongue. It was looking forward to. Then lunch. Lunch what? Aloo paratha. Dinner. Dinner what? Aloo paratha. Next day, breakfast. What? Aloo. Also, the thing is, in the Himalayas, you also want to be a little warm. So, the aloo and paratha, the wheat, if you have rice, the body cools. So, night, we would not, suggest anybody to have rice, because the rice cools down the system. And it also builds up vata. So, it does not help in digestion, and early morning you will need to trek. And hence, if you have, today morning we looked at, Pavana Muktasana. Pavana, vata gets logged, you will have issues trekking up. It does not warm up, the system needs to be warmed up much more. But with wheat, roti, dal, it becomes very straightforward. But at the end of the week, what would have happened to the South Indians? Fed up with aloo paratha. So this we call as raga dvesha. So raga is attraction, dvesha is repulsion. We are attracted towards something, we expect, look forward to it. The same energy gets converted to dvesha. We are repulsed from it. When our expectations are met, we have an expectation window. When our expectations are met, when life experiences happen, then we are okay with it. When our expectation window is like this, but life experiences happen all through, then many of it we are missing. So this is a form of psychological conditioning, which is very helpful. Raga, dvesha help us in functional decision making, quick decision making. So neuronal pathways, efficient pathways are made by which we can quickly arrive at a decision. But at the same time, they limit us, limit our functionality. And hence, we look at appropriate application of raga, dvesha. So, we look at the klesha as something that causes obstacles or obstruction, and hence the error in expression or manifestation. Avidya is ignorance. Ignorance of fundamental principles. The fundamental, prime principles from which everything happens. For example, some might once I had two student groups, one belonging to electrical engineering and another belonging to mechanical engineering, fighting with each other, saying which is better. Which is better? Yes. And then electrical engineering fighting with computer science and engineering. Which is better? No, obviously one should be better than the other. This does not recognize, if we go to the fundamental principles, they arise from the same fundamental principles. For example, earlier computer science used to be within electrical engineering. So this sort of a conflict is resolved just by going into deeper principles, which become hidden, because to rise up, we abstract those details away. We lose connect with the fundamental principles. That's why in the any educational process, the highest degree is PhD, which is a Doctor of Philosophy. Because philosophy unites. Philosophy provides the unifying principles to diverse manifestations of knowledge. That understanding, that unifying principle, when it's abstracted away, it's called avidya. Avidya means it's a fundamental ignorance of the unifying principles, and hence only focusing on manifestation or expression. Not at the same time recognizing the unifying principles. For example, this is different from this. But how are we connected? Are we connected? That's a case in point. So simultaneously looking at the unifying principles is very, very useful. This is different from that light, is different from that AC, which is different from this nervous system. How are they unified?
Energy.
The same electrical principles apply. This is also electrical principles. This is electrical principles. That light, so is that. But different manifestations. So not just the differences, but the unifying principles. But when the unifying principles are abstracted away, that is called avidya. That causes ignorance. Ignorance of the unifying principles, the underlying principles. And that leads to asmita. Asmita is I as separate from all this. And that causes conflict, the subject-object divide. That's why we break this down into not just binary system, subject-object, I, them, me versus them, not that. We break it down, for example, developed versus developing countries. Where is something like that? If we go into details, do we have developed versus developing countries? No. There is a whole spectrum out there. But for the sake of organization, or we conveniently abstract away details. So it's always useful to remember, when we abstract away details, there are categories that emerge, but at the same time there are principles that unify all of that and spread. It's an entire spread, the entire spectrum. It's not just binaries that we deal with. Subject, object, not just binaries. Me, not me. Binaries. It's a spread. So that fundamental ignorance causes this binary, the spread becomes polarized, which is asmita. And that further gets distanced through ragadvesha. Ragadvesha is, I like this, I don't like this. I'm attracted to this, I'm not attracted to this. All of our experiences get polarized like this, further and further, from the ground principles that unify. And that finally leads to abhinivesha, which is fear of losing that objectivity. That's why Professor Rahul took an extreme position yesterday that everything is subjective. Why? Because he understands this process. So how is this useful to embody a value when we understand this process? Generally, people, what we identify as me, for example, how would I define myself? If I were to ask a student or somebody to define themselves, first thing that we identify is, let's say, what would we identify ourselves with? Name. Okay. Gender.
Then body counts.
Okay. I look thin, I'm tall. But as we grow up, it shifts to what we do, how we are trained, our professions, appearance, our status, prestige, fame, right? Which is not wrong. These are conditionings, which further lead to projections along those conditionings. I'm like this, I'm positive. You know, one very interesting thing that happened, we had a questionnaire circulated amongst people and during one of our yoga programs, and asked them, how do you look? There is something called Prakriti analysis in Ayurveda. So, what is your Prakriti? You know, how do you look at yourselves? They, you know, when the answers came out, you know, they responded to that. Very interestingly, the responses were not what they were right now, but what they wish to be in the future. For example, are you thin or are you, a little plump? What they were right now, let's keep it aside. What they wish to be, that is what was the response. So that indicates our conditioned processes. What do we identify with predominantly? So that is how we project into reality. Our conditioned processes, we condition ourselves in terms of, okay, this is right. And using those lens, evaluate everybody. Those who don't fit into that pattern, we are not too comfortable with. We classify as, I like this, I don't like this. I like this, I don't like this. And we identify that I am like this. We identify ourselves with those conditioned patterns. I am like this, I like this. This is what I am. But it is just a process of conditioning. It's a process of building up a pattern, a habit. Okay. That's why understanding this process becomes very useful. This applies to everything. If we look at it, it applies to our training as a professional. It applies to our training as any role that we play. It applies to everything. When we understand the process of how it works, then we apply it appropriately. For example, we might identify ourselves so much with being a professor that we carry around everywhere as a professor, which is not wrong. But let's say you go out into the, there is the auto wala, you carry yourselves as a professor. But the poor guy might not understand it and hence not acknowledge it, but you would be offended. Hey, I'm a professor. He will just simply look at you as, kahan se aa gaye? It very easily happens. So this process is what we have described in terms of the kleshas. These obstruct the flow of life that we represent. No? But it can be used to intelligently regulate it. Regulation is not a problem, but obstruction is definitely a problem. When there is intelligent regulation, then the flow is, you flow as per the requirements and what is required. But otherwise, it's obstructed and you feel suffocated. That causes suffering, misery. Okay. So that's where we look at cleansing. Please.
So, you mean to say that while proper conditioning, everything can be changed, right? I mean, by a proper process, because, for example, I have such traits, I have few traits, okay, which are creating obstacles. So, that can be changed through proper conditioning by using tools and techniques?
Yes, but why do you wish to change? That is also a very important reason. Because that's why we will introduce other aspects as well.
Okay.
That will help us understand it better. We are just into the process. So, please.
I would like to take you back to the beginning of the conversation. I hope that's not a problem.
No, not problem.
Ma'am, Smriti ma'am has said that in the beginning that the values and the change in behavior need honesty as a priority for the second person to imbibe those qualities. But don't you think that the willpower is much more important than the honesty?
No, actually, honesty I gave as an example. Suppose we want that person to be honest.
Yes.
It's very difficult from next day to become honest. I gave it as an example. I did not say that's the value,
Okay.
but I said because values take some time to manifest. I gave honesty as an example of a value.
Okay. So how do we let the second person imbibe that willpower? How do we develop that willpower in the second person?
Yes, so that's why we are looking at the underlying processes.
Alright.
Using these frameworks that will give us that understanding, because with understanding we are liberated from suffering. Our own expectations become better educated, because otherwise we might expect the other person to मैंने बोल दिया, you have not done it. That would be the expectation, which also can be traumatic for us, because we expect the world to change but it has not changed. I am expecting it should change, na? That's which is very good feeling. That's a genuine you want it to change, but it does not change just like that, and hence educating our own expectations is very useful. That's why we are looking at frameworks.
See, for example, a typical thing that happens is during lecture hours, we see that many students tend to sleep. One thing is, you can always tell them that just wake up in class, stay awake in class, or you can play, you can have some activity to wake them up. But the yogic system does not look at it that way. It does not address it directly. We will have to go deeper into it in terms of looking at the daily schedule of the student. What kind of food does the student consume? What kind of activities of course, as a system, we don't have much time. We teach from 9 to 5 and go back home. I do agree. But there can be a small group of people who are dedicated to looking at such processes. At least personally, we've been able to do that. So this is basically going a little deeper and understanding what are the obstacles for the student or for that person to manifest those values. So that's why we are looking at these obstacles. So honesty was an example. Suppose I have to manifest honesty. What are the obstacles that that are created because of which I'm not honest? We'll have to start working on those fundamental things before we go into the values directly.
Because then we would be more efficient, more effective at what we do. We would see visible results. Otherwise, the results are not very easy to see. We can understand this as we go forward. See, as I yesterday gave an example, for a child to take a single step, a physical step, so many subliminal processes are going on beneath the scenes for that child to take one step. Like that, a behavioral change or any value orientation, if the attitudinal change needs to happen, so many subliminal processes will have to be affected for that change to be visible. Otherwise, it's not, we expect it, but just because we expect it does not mean it will really happen. So that's where understanding it from, these are one way to look at them. There are other ways to look at them as well. This we are sharing because these are very useful. This has been found to be very useful amongst for a long time. So we look at it mainly in terms of body, emotion, and cognition. No? So when we say cleansing, we can see that a very simple, seemingly crude, but a very useful example to understand it is, let's say our stomach is loaded. How do you feel? Will you be able to focus on anything at hand?
Drowsy, uneasy.
Sleepy, drowsy, uneasy, and hence your attention is locked up here. But when it's cleansed, how do you feel? Do you remember this? You don't even remember this, right? You can focus on the job at hand. Similarly, when we say ego conflict, very easy to have in relationships, or in teamwork, or in regular life. Ego conflict. What does that indicate to you?
Whether your
Mind is loaded.
Impurity.
Impurity.
It's full of itself.
Full of itself. Let's say we look at another person. Do we see them at that point in time as they are, or do we look at the image of them that we have of
It becomes a perception based.
our perception? And when we are full of that, that chokes our perception to being very, very narrow. We don't give any scope for the other person. We work ourselves up. Now this, if you look at it as a process, then you would see it just needs to be cleansed. Then you are a little free flowing. You can accommodate others, live comfortably, and you don't have an ego conflict. So that's why understanding it in terms of these frameworks also becomes very useful, intuitive, so that it helps us in navigating complex territory. That is the whole idea. Because we wish to be effective with values. But what are the underlying processes to values? Later and earlier also we have been looking at the neuroscientific perspective. There are different perspectives as we discussed yesterday. The same thing when approached from diverse kinds of perspectives helps enlighten us, gives us depth perception. Then we are able to look deeper into the aspect and understand it clearly. So that is the use of this kind of approach. So we will look at some of these terminologies which will help us understand it deeper. Tridosha is typically used in Indian physiology to understand the functions. A balance of the doshas is considered health. Someone who is not healthy, imbalanced in terms of doshas, for them, just as the focus is here, and hence what we are saying in terms of a value might not really be graspable. Even that can be a limitation. When we understand it, then we are liberated in our own expectations of what to expect. We can handle it much better. Tridosha is Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata is the principle of movement. Pitta is the principle of transformation. And Kapha is the principle of building up or lubrication. So imbalances to this can cause various issues. For example, there is lubrication available in the in the nasal passage. A normal lubrication and you don't feel its existence at all. But let's say improper lubrication. If it becomes a lot, what do you call that?
Cold.
A cold, a sinus blockage. A normal function, but when it's imbalanced due to various factors, diverse interactions, that becomes a blockage. Someone, a student who has severe blockage here, would they be able to pay full attention to what you're saying? Might not be. Not so very easy. They will have to use a lot of their will to be able to overcome this blockage, to be able to even grasp what you're saying. It will automatically dull their system. So very simple understanding. This understanding would automatically make you a little more empathetic. Empathetic. You would know, okay, this is what they are undergoing. And hence, what is it that will help them understand? How do we be more effective in value transmission, in creating that value ecosystem? I have encountered many students who, in the morning, they've reported a bitter taste in their mouth. They wake up with a bitter taste in their mouth. Now, what would this indicate? And they start suffering from ulcers, mouth ulcers. What would this indicate? Pitta, an imbalance in Pitta. Why would this happen? Stress, yes. Stress. Eating habits, okay. Acidity. Why would this happen predominantly? Late sleep. So many students, they work into the night. When we understand this, then that understanding itself, we start designing, solutions to that. Not just in terms of, hey, you should not sleep late. That's like a direct solution. Which, would that be acceptable to them? Some students might have the habit of taking rest in the evening and working on assignments late into the night. Cannot blame that. But this sort of an understanding will help us work around the issue. Because all of this affects, the value process. Even their acceptance of the value. That's why we are, looking at it from this angle. Similarly, Vata, there would be high sense of ideas, but no actionating on it. That's a typical Vata disturbance. All ideas, but actionating, when it comes to actionating, almost zero. This is a widespread phenomenon amongst students or young people, which is not right or wrong. But it's useful to understand these conditions from diverse frameworks, because these are common things that we encounter even within ourselves. Then that understanding actually liberates us from self-judgment, harsh judgment of students, harsh judgment of others. We are a little more, compassionate. We understand, okay, it's okay, we'll work around it. So that's where we are also looking at meditation, we are also looking at morning yoga sessions and so on, which provide various tools to approach the problem, because those become very useful. It's like a Swiss, army knife. You need multiple tools to tackle the issue. That's why even intellectual frameworks are tools to tackle the issue. Better understanding liberates us from judgment, harsh judgment, which many of us suffer from. We just judge. Why even this is not done? They are not participating in class or anything. But why would that happen? That is very useful to, approach. So, towards that, one of the key things is chakras. You want to? You can continue. Okay. Now, yeah, I was planning to okay. Trigunas, I was planning to touch upon later after dealing with this. Triguna means, the three gunas, which is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Now, Sattva and Rajas, as per the Indian philosophical system, the whole of manifestation is looked at coming from the same principles. Now, the objective principle is Tamas. The subjective cognitive principle is Sattva. So, from the same source, the object and the subject has come up. What we call the subject is called the Sattvic, Sattva. the principle of sattva. What we call as the object is the principle of tamas. It's a principle, not a physical thing. So when we look at it, when we stabilize ourselves, we keenly observe, then we are observing ourselves observing. And who's the object here? We ourselves, we are observing the eyes observing. And hence this itself is an object, and there is a sattva. Object means tamas, and sattva, deeper. Similarly, we can observe our emotions changing. I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling this. We are able to observe. That means that's the tamasic principle. Whatever is subject to observation is the tamasic principle. That's called tamas. The interaction between the the cognizing principle and the objective principle, subjective and the objective principle, is called rajas. That's the interactive principle. So we are talking in terms of principles, not exactly in terms of manifestation. You can apply this anywhere. That's why you will find that all of this creation is, Trigunatmika. The fundamental principle is based on Triguna, because subject, object. With this, we can decode the entire reality. That's how it looked at. Make sense? Any clarification?
Could you explain more on an simplified ways? Because even I want to, or you could repeat.
Okay. We have only 15 more minutes. So maybe later, if we get time, we will again dwell upon this. Because I didn't want to go too much into philosophy, but it's useful to understand it, because the basis is looked at in those terms. So the basis is in terms of, for example, this is considered the object, that is the body. The body we have defined yesterday as an instrument which is outward. No, bahya karana. And then we have defined anta karana, the inner instrument. The inner instrument is further, compartmentalized, multiple components are looked at as manas, chitta, buddhi, ahankara. Okay. Now these are various ways of looking at the same thing. What this means we will look at later. So we are looking at the objective principle, the subjective, the cognizing principle, and the interaction between these. Now, is there anything that does not fall within this these three lines? Anything at all? Yeah. So everything falls along these lines, because these principles are all encompassing. So we say that, for example, this creation, if you look at, is there anything that is created which is not done by human ingenuity, intelligence? How about this mic, this glass bottle, this table, this, everything that you can see. So towards this, the objects that we can see, the cognizing principle, both interacting together and co-evolving, is how creation is defined. Make sense? Complex? Simple? Easy to understand? The chair that we are sitting, how about values? Our creation?
Conceptual ideas which need to be practiced.
But are those ideas also creations? Yes,
They are all
creations, our own creations. And hence we need to know the tools and the know-how to participate in co-creating that reality. Is it not so? And now we have invested in tools and know-how to participate in co-creating this, to participate in co-creating in this, to participate in co-creating in this, right? Is it not so? Or is it like, just like that it came and landed here? There is nothing like that. Is it not so? Likewise, even subjective creations, ideas, desires, societal values are looked at concretely in terms of creations. We need know-how. We need the tools to be able to create those and sustain those values. Because even they are creations. At our level, this is the creation. What we call as Daiva is basically at the subtler level. Because we have not created the source material of this. We have not created, for example, this body yet. We don't know the know-how. We have not got the know-how of how to create this human being together. So that's how it's analyzed systematically. So similarly, when we are engaging in this process, we are actually looking at creating value. Education as creating value. How do we transfer the know-how, the principles by which people can create value for themselves and for society, for everybody? Is it not the way we are approaching it? That's the way we are approaching it. Towards it, we are looking at frameworks. It's very simple that way. It's participating in co-creation of everything. Both the gross, the objective, as well as the what we call as subtler objective. Because even that is looked at along these lines. So, Trigunatmika.
Even today also, the value system which is around us, people are corrupt and dishonest, all these things are because of their own creations. And they think that it is required for...
It is, yes, exactly.
And the rejuvenating things which will reinforce that this is not right, this is right, those things are not there.
Not there.
That's what
Beautiful.
this has happened.
Beautiful. Did you get the...
But how to do that second part of it? Regeneration ways we try to control those.
So, rather than using the word control, we are looking at using the word regulation. It's not wrong. We individually don't see, for example, if you ask somebody, corrupt is a huge word. Let's say you ask somebody who's corrupt, they have a justification for that. They have a valid justification. For them, it's valid. So we need to provide them with the know-how, the tools by which they can create better. They are creating that reality. How do they create it better? Right? Is that not what becomes so very important? Otherwise, they are creating, maybe even unconsciously. And they are self-justified in doing that.
In fact, the Mahabharata has some good insights on this, especially since the context is corruption. So it talks about the Sama, Dana, Beda and Danda model of providing justice and correction and punishment to this. So now what has happened is, since we have a huge population and large masses of people are involved in this, Danda seems to be the only way to deal with this, like punishment, direct punishment. But there are also ways where we can use, harmonious frameworks or, to deal with this. So I think, during our interaction with one of the top IAS officers, he was mentioning that there is no reward or no mechanism to reward the good qualities. Good qualities will just be there without acknowledgement. But when something bad happens, then some corrective measure is taken or punishment is given.
Punished.
Exactly. So there is no ecosystem to nurture those good values in this, this whole thing. So that seems to be a very pertinent point, because within an educational institution it's a different thing, but once you go out and start working, it's a completely different dimension altogether.
So it's our creation that we have created a system which makes doing wrong easy and doing good difficult. So we can reverse the creation, and that's the process.
Exactly. And those will be the change makers, those who we call change agents or change makers are the ones who flip this whole idea.
Together.
Exactly.
Okay. That's why it's co-creating. So how do we participate better? That is the whole idea.
Because, what happens in corruption is people are also inducted into the process. Once there is corruption, then more people are inducted into the process. And those people do not have any other way but to be corrupt. So that chain has to be broken. So that you can use Sama to break it, Bheda to break it, or Danda to break that.
So we are not talking of binaries here. We are clearly breaking it down and making it more functional, approachable, workable. We need a working hypothesis, and we are constantly investing in growing the hypothesis. We have the understanding of reality that we have is more like a working hypothesis. It's a work in progress. The more we add to it, the more we invest in it, we have better tools, better ways to approach reality, how to participate in co-creating this reality better. And that's what everyone seeks. So, Tridosha, Triguna, we have approached from that angle. Now, from a more practical view, if we look at it, we are processing information, data, we take in what we hear, what we see, we are processing it through the sensory channels. But how do we process thoughts? How do we process desires? Are we even processing it? Do we process thoughts? Or is it just random?
There is a process or system, but definitely there must be a system.
There must be a system. There must be a structure to it. Just as information does not flow in just like that, there is a clear structure to it. Through neuroscience, we understand the structure very clearly. Likewise, in the yogic system, we look at thoughts. Everything broadly is looked at as thoughts, and they are processed through the chakras. They are looked at in terms of energy frequencies. So diverse frequencies, all emotions, all thought patterns, all desire patterns. There are diverse frequencies. Here the critical thing to understand, just as we discussed with Tridosha, the critical thing about health, a good robust health, is balance of the doshas. So health is approached from a sense of balance. Similarly, happiness, a good mental, a good personality, everything is looked at in terms of balance. Imbalance of the flow causes personality disorders or processing errors in those thoughts, thought processing errors, if we can approach it from that angle. And hence the whole idea in the yogic system is to balance the chakras, the flow in the chakras, so that there is proper balanced processing of incoming thoughts, outgoing thoughts, desires, everything is classified into thoughts because they are subtle. This is called Sukshma Sharira or subtle body. Sthula Sharira, gross body. So we distinguish between these both, Sthula and Sukshma. So when we understand that there is a structure, there is no idea of randomness. For example, for this to be here, is it random? Randomly it came here? No. Similarly, every thought, there is no randomness if we understand the process behind it, the structure or the order behind it. That's why it's useful to understand the chakras as well, because thought is not considered random. But how do we balance the flow? That's the critical thing that is looked at. Okay. Then we are just introducing a lot of terminology. Hopefully, we'll be looking at some applications of these. This is to introduce the terminology so that these don't appear, or you don't look at it as new or very simple terminologies. Likewise,
this cleansing at multiple, they follow order one after another?
No.
This no. Basically, we have gone from body, emotion, cognition to be able to understand it in intuitive terms. All these are useful. So we have just listed all of these because they flow. For example, the subjective objective principle and the interactive principle is everywhere. Likewise, these principles interwork with everything. So that's why we have not given a specific order. They've just put it up there. Which is seemingly disorderly, but no. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha. A kosha is a part or a component of the whole. So, just as, for example, this mobile phone, there would be a processor, there would be a camera, there is a microphone, there is a screen. There are various components to this which have individually evolved and also been put together. So, and hence this manifestation is a composite. It's not a monolith, it's a composite of different components that have individually evolved and also co-evolved. Similarly, the human system is looked at as a composite of multiple components. So you have Annamaya, which is the product of Anna, food. Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, and Anandamaya. Okay.